I started watching your documentary, The Ripple Effect. I also was intrigued about a couple of things that was in that documentary. When you talked about slow speed to intercept, explain that.
Um, I had to kind of remember what the context was about. So the idea it was a question to the viewer. I wasn't telling somebody how to do something. But what it was referencing is that I had worked a lot on speed, delivery, closing, and a lot of the stuff that I've done in the past when I first started was a lot of reaction um, based training. So that's where your speed development comes in. Your actions. What actions do you take when somebody approaches you? And generally, you you compensate for that space and time for speed. So you're always like overwhelming that area.
Right.
When you slow speed down or you slow yourself down, I should have said that, then you see another variable, which then has to connect with your opponent's perception. So what happens is that they're registering how you move, and most people, I have to stop saying most people, but to use my words carefully, is that the perception of Jeet Kune Do when you first start is that you have to be as you have to be faster than your opponent to try to intercept them. But when you adjust their perception, you adjust their ability to read you, then you start using the other set of principles that generally most people don't get to
Right.
because either it's time, instruction, people's belief systems, it usually gets in the way.
What I've seen lately, generally in the Jeet Kune Do martial arts community, especially nowadays with YouTube and a lot of how many people do YouTube videos about Jeet Kune Do, doing this, doing that. And there's one key component that's I've always looked for in the video. The missing key component is interception. And honestly, Jeet Kune Do, the way of intercepting fist, tells that word, interception, and I don't see it. When you teach Jeet Kune Do, interception, has that always been the factor of what you're teaching?
Yeah, but I usually ask people the question as to what their goals are first, because if it is the ability that when you teach someone this art and dependent on your viewers, because, and I'll get to this as we get through the interview, but when you convey that you're the instructor of Jeet Kune Do, their assumption is based off their belief system, which maybe they read, they learned, they maybe read some information on the internet, and they kind of come in with a preconceived idea that you will share this fascinating martial art that can save them. But so asking them the questions like, "What's your biggest goal?" is like, "Well, I just want to be healthy. I just want to learn how to defend myself."
Right.
Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. It's not necessarily interception is their forefront. So then I guide them in that direction. What is it that they need?
Right.
Um, so the interception doesn't really come into mind when I'm actually training people because it is something I will share, but if it's not on their vision or their goals, then it's not something that they need.
Now,
So
do you work on what they need, especially
yeah,
they
most definitely, because if it's self-confidence, usually it's self-confidence, and that's sometimes that word kind of gets tossed around like it's nothing.
right,
Um, it's like it's a beginning to, understanding, just like all kids do. Self-discipline, self-confidence, self-esteem raises, but self-confidence or self-control is that biggest factor that I think most people lose when they start to get into adulthood,
right.
because then we're starting to worry about more things, more responsibilities, and they don't understand how to align their thought processes with their career or their conditioning or their mental health. And that's where it really matters. So yeah, I start diving into that area. But going back to your point, if it is interception that they look for, then I basically tell them, it says, you know what it takes to do that? I mean,
Right,
because if you want to do that, then you have to realize what age that you're at, number one. Number two, what lifestyle are you living? Number three, are you going to need it in in your aspirations? You
right,
know, if it's like if a guy is telling and asking me, "Hey, I'm going to go into MMA field." Like, great. Are you going to go for it? Yes, but I want to learn Jeet Kune Do. I would just say, well, keep in mind that when we're training this, I could teach you some aspects, but not all of it. Why is that? Well, it's because MMA has restricted rules that you can't, do the whole eye jab stuff. We don't need to talk about that.
right.
But the idea of utilizing all, means to an end kind of goes out to the window, so you can only share certain aspects of it. And I usually refer them to an MMA gym if that's the case.
I think I told you about this. I had a certain similar question that a person who wanted to do an online class with me,
Right,
he wanted to learn some aspects of Jeet Kune Do. And I was like, why some aspects? And he said the same thing because I'm also studying to become a professional fighter.
right,
Like, well, as like what you said, there are certain restrictions in MMA, and there's certain things that you can't do and you should do, or vice
right,
versa. And I told him, well, why learn some aspects of Jeet Kune Do when you could learn all of it?
right.
So if you're learning some aspects of Jeet Kune Do, then it's not really Jeet Kune Do. And he was getting a little confused. So I was like telling him, well, if you want to learn something, like for instance, if you wanted to be, let's say, a doctor, I can't teach you some aspects of being a doctor. You need to go through the whole curriculum. You're right. Even choosing students, you have to go through some sort of certain process. And that's actually my next question to you, Octavio. Like a potential student comes up to you, how do you go through that process? It's like, okay, I think you and I are a best fit to train together in Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah. As far as because I have two areas that I work with. I work with the Jeet Kune Do and as well as the conditioning aspect.
Right,
Now we could say that there is conditioning in Jeet Kune Do. That's true, but the ultimate goal of most people is that build of that self-awareness. So there's a aspect to my clientele base that I use to support their needs. When it comes to the Jeet Kune Do, um, I just kind of advise them and say, I know today's age, you could pretty much, what do you call it, hop around and try to learn the best flavor that you could find and go with that.
right,
But if you're going to start working with me, I need you to pay attention. I need you to be a committed individual like the olden days where you need to focus on, let's say, this is your plan. This is the outcome of the plan. If you want to reach this, then I need your focus. Otherwise, I can't do my job. So it is important. I mean, if they're going to work with you, that they have a committed effort, that they are going to pay attention. I mean, I think that's key, especially nowadays with all the internet stuff going on, and they're just getting videos after video of everybody teaching something.
right.
It could get distracting. So it's not that you're not telling them to stop watching that, but you just need their attention, and then find out whether or not this is something that they want to apply in their life. Because I'm sure Vincent, modern day society isn't like the way it used to. And I'm sure, your teacher would agree. Like back then, it was very prominent to be with one instructor or two, and that's
Right.
it, and then you're focused on learning and refining what you've learned and things of that nature. And today, most people's attention span is very short. So if you're going to teach someone, minimal, a year or two.
Now, have you come across a student who said that, yeah, I want to learn from you, but I also am learning from a so-called JKD teacher? Have you had
Uh,
that any type of instance before?
Very rare. I do have one, but it's not continual. Every once in a while, it's here and there. But that's not. It's not it's not their fault because I mean they're so far away. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's how else are they going to connect with people
Right.
on a regular basis? But I have had some where, yeah, I would like. I'll give you an example. I'd like to have you out for a seminar. Like, cool. Who are you training with? Well, I have so and so. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. I mean, do you like doing what they're doing? Absolutely. I just wanted you to come out for a seminar. I'm like, well, one, I don't want to, you know,
Yeah.
first,
Right.
you'd probably want to ask your teacher if it's okay.
Exactly.
Second, um, I don't know if it's going to work out the way I would think I'd want you to achieve. I
Right.
mean, I don't mind people having backgrounds and different methods and things like that. I just, once again, going back, I need your attention. Otherwise, I can't do my job. I'm really focused in on that. Where there's also that trend, that culture where, everybody has something. Well, if everybody had something, then what is what are we talking about here? What truth are we talking about? Because if we're fragmenting everything, then this it's just partial, it's fragmented.
So lately, I've been actually reading the comments section on your page. Um, Really
Which
good
ones?
comments. Yeah. Well,
All of
listen.
them?
Hey, listen. You know what? I When I read these comments, you also got the good comments. Then you got those great, those
Hey,
great other comments,
all right.
and I see you respond. And listen, there are pretty good responses that I've seen over in other pages, but you know, yours always is up there. I don't want to name this person's name who you were responding to on a certain video. He actually responded to my video way months before. Hey, I know this guy. And what he commented on your under your video was, I've seen everything out there, but I'm also still learning. And I'm like, what? And then you responded like, well, how do you convey to your students that if you do see everything out there and you're still learning, how do you tell your students or what do you teach your students if you're still doing that? And I was like, well, that's actually a really good response from Octavio. So when a person who was, I'm going to call them trolls, when these trolls start start commenting,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? Like how like there are times when like I've seen other people like really get so mad and they go back and forth and like we discussed before, I'm like, it's not a big deal, man. It's just listen,
Yeah.
like it's your opinion, cool. I'm not gonna spend my
Yeah.
whole day saying the same thing over again, different words, and then I've noticed I've done this for 6 hours.
Social media is that type of game, to be honest. It's not
Right.
um, here's the thing. I think most of us or some of us look at it as though they're walking into your storefront.
Hmm.
And can you imagine somebody talking to you like that? It really riles you up, right? You get upset. Now, if you happen to look at it from a different perspective, like, okay, they're not in your face, they're away,
Hmm.
they want to express their own thoughts. And why do they want to express their own thoughts? And also, it isn't their page, it's your page. So they're
Right.
coming to you. And I have reflected on that years ago, but in order for you to understand what's going on with their questions or their comments or sometimes just statements, it's really that's all it is. you have to come down to what's happening within yourself first. Like,
Mm,
why do we react to things? Why do we look at it that way? Well, because there's something in our past that's causing us to do this. So once you start to understand who you are, and I can go deeper into that, but right now, who you are, then you realize that people have the same mass.
mm,
So then you find out these individuals, as soon as their statement comes out, the first question is, who are these people? It's not their name. It's not
right,
who is this guy?
right.
And let's check out this profile, but who is he for
Mm,
real? And you realize they usually are triggered. This is the word that's being used or tossed around. They're
right.
triggered by something they see that reflects of their past or experience, or it's something that they've never seen before or understand. So they
Mm,
end up commenting on a negative. Sometimes, well, I'll say most of the time, because the internet is about 70% negative, but most of the time it's a negative response because of how they feel about it, and they want to feel heard.
mm,
And then uh, in some cases you can't really have a conversation. And if that's the case, I'll throw out a meme or say something, and they get really upset and leave. But that's them. That's on them.
right.
But you once you recognize who they are, then you can have, or you try to have a conversation with them. If they can't have a conversation with you, then um, I kind of dwindle away from those comments. To be honest, I know front to back about what people are thinking and what they're commenting, so it
Mm.
doesn't really bother me.
From what you just said, is that the reason why you also stay away from these Facebook forums, like
Yeah. Well,
this concept versus original type of deal? I mean,
I, one, I don't have the time for it, and then there's there's a spiraling effect. We're talking about the ripple effect earlier, but there's a spiraling effect within those forums because there's a lot of cultural biases, and what I mean by that is, and I'm sure you would agree because you're reflecting on this stuff. Since the man passed away over 50 years ago, these belief systems started to be developed.
right.
Okay. And we know what they are, but they've they've become custom and tradition. And because of that, they'll do whatever it takes to defend that. So you can't convince people otherwise. Be To them it would feel negative, and that's because of what they believe or what their past is. So
Hmm.
once you realize that, you can't change someone's thoughts or choices, even though you explain to them, or even if you clearly see in the notes what it says, you still can't convince someone because now their filing system in their subconsciousness is telling them, I need to protect this. You can't convince me otherwise. So it's not worth even arguing with people.
You mentioned notes. Let's switch tracks again. The Tao Jeet Kune Do. I know you did an excerpt for the expanded edition. Now, my question to you is, the first time that you read the Tao Jeet Kune Do, what was your first thoughts of it, and how, if it did affect your life while you were training in Jeet Kune Do and afterwards to teach what you're teaching right now?
Yeah, the words were very intriguing. I had a My education level was pretty weak when I was younger. When I was a kid, I just wanted to learn, understand. I was a kid in the back of the classroom. I, like stayed away from being in the front.
Mm,
But in the aspects of trying to understand this, reading that was intriguing. And as a kid, you really don't comprehend a lot because you lack the experience.
mhm.
But it was interesting and confusing at the same time. Like, because I related a lot to photographs, like images and stuff like that. That's
Mhm.
that's how I learned.
Same
Is
thing too. That was my type of speed too.
Yeah.
The pictures, even though that sounds rudimentary.
Yeah, I upgraded it to this one now, but the photographs were really cool.
Right.
And as time went on, I mean, I didn't know the difference, the information and the context, and there was whatever I could absorb, right? But it
Hmm.
was up until I started meeting up with Jerry, that's what he told me what these were about. Like these are just photographs, and then you also have the notes.
Hmm.
So if you wanted to relate any of them, it's the photographs and the notes inside the book. Um, and then, I started painting a clearer picture as time went on. It's taken like years. It's not like, oh, voila, I know it. I mean, somebody try to read the Tao in the beginning, they're not going to understand it. I mean,
Absolutely.
it could take them years to finally kind of comprehend what their body structure and their mental attitude behind it is. But some people can never really get there. And I see it, because it's taken me a long time to kind of figure it out as well. It's not an easy project. Somebody telling you something in the past and saying this is what it is can really be completely something different today.
I felt that the stuff that I've seen, all the videos that you're putting out in on YouTube or on Facebook, have pretty good meaning of practicality. And it seems to me that from what I'm looking at while you're doing these demonstrations, is like you redefined yourself, meaning like you have refinement of your movement over the years. And I felt that a lot of people, especially with what Steve Golden said, that never teach what your teacher is teaching. It gets to the point where you have to teach what you're teaching. Now, do you resonate with what Steve was asking
N-
or telling you on that part?
Definitely, he has a point because that's something that Jerry spoke about as well. It was
Okay.
something that allowed me to grow after Jerry's passing. It's just that even Jerry at the time would tell me that, you can't follow into my shadow. Like I didn't know what that meant. Maybe he thought he didn't want me to use his name or something, but it wasn't that. It was the fact that don't follow my shadow was like don't um don't do what I did, like spend all this time uh hyper focused on the specific
Mm.
uh development of these pieces and go out of your way to just make sure that it's fully the way it's supposed to be. Now, there's a truth to that, but there's also a truth to um, when I'm conveying this, I also have to speak to principle. I can't speak to leveraging what Bruce did. I mean,
Hmm.
we weren't there. I wasn't there when Bruce was alive, so I can't speak to Bruce Lee, or I can't leverage Bruce Lee to come across my point. Now, his students did, and they were able to do that very well. They would convey their stories, and then they would show a technique. Very simple, right? Or in most cases, it wasn't simple in those days. But today, to prove my point, I had to speak to principle and show it, prove it in most cases. Um, Video, on the other hand, is a different story. But in person, that's when it helps. And as time goes on, I'm starting to realize now I am a coach. I am getting older. I can't sit there and like fight it out with people. I didn't grow in the era with the opportunities of MMA and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But the I mean, the windows were there, but the risks were really high. Like, you imagine like going in, people breaking their legs and stuff. They come out not walking very well at all.
Yeah.
This is this is how that life is, and my life was different. I was working towards something else. So now, I mean, I could do this, absolutely. Can I? Am I confident that I can do it? Absolutely. And then also, am I confident that I can share it with people to be able to use this when they need it? Absolutely. So then, in Jerry's point that, and at Steve's point that you don't want to continue teaching and just what do you call it? Just collectively holding on to the same stuff and then passing it down. You haven't learned anything. In other words, you have to then explore yourself. When they say, do your own research, it's not, you know, research everything that is out there, then you're just going to add complexity to the life. No, if you have a tool that has high probability success rates, why are you going down to the low probability success rates
Right.
and focusing on that? You're refining yourself and your framework to ensure that you can develop a better way. Like you said, I'm refining myself every year to be better at what I do. Now, this is not to say that, to take it away from why my hands now lower or higher or whatever. In the beginning, you have to have structure. So yeah, the hands are going to
Right.
be in place for a reason because you're not aware of your positions.
You mentioned Jerry and Steve. Has their words of, let's say, words of wisdom or words of teaching, do you feel that whatever they taught you, you can actually put that into more of your spin on it?
Steve more like was more of that guide that I needed to let go of the past. Steve was one of those influential teachers, and I also have a really good friend of mine that has also influenced me to open up. And they say be yourself, but what does that really mean?
Right.
People say be yourself, honestly express yourself. How does that take into account? What does that really mean? And you have to really do a deep dive of your own past and your own uh, your own moments that you seem to respond to when things are happening. Like, how do you, if you don't have control of yourself, how can you help other
Other
people have
people.
control of theirs? So then, what was really driving me was my own ambitious journey to try to understand all this first, and then to open it up. Like I said, like, yes, I was like making sure that you make sure you teach this the way Bruce Lee taught it, blah blah blah, going down the line, and I fully respected that, and I think most people can live with that. I just, for some reason, for me, it was because of my frame, my size, my abilities, that I needed to change. I needed to open up. Now I can see it, or before I could not. And I always overcompensated it with speed, by the way. So that speed was not always the answer.
Right.
And that, going back to the first question that you asked, you, once you realize how you can adjust it, then you understand what timing is.
In a few words, how can you describe Jerry's teaching?
He was making it pretty simple in that way to make me think. Because when I was younger, he would teach me in a way to just use my speed and my attributes to my advantage.
Right.
Um, and I think he did that on purpose because he knew I was at an age where I could now use it in that way. Whether or not, I would have gotten to this other side of things, like the timing approach, a lot more on timing, and then becomes more refined as you get older. Because I've noticed that I'm spending a lot of time in my life since my youth through now today where things are adjusting. And that's what's really interesting with the five ways of attack is that it's an adjustment of how you perceive things.
Mhm.
You you use it. But what do you use? Would be the question. It's usually the opponent's the ingredient to all this, but then you have to recognize what their actions are, behaviors, and habits. And then not only that, your physical body and your attributes have a lot to do with what's going to compensate with speed, power, all that stuff, agility. But uh, it was simple. So Jerry used uh, some specific principles. Okay, usually these are categories. He
Right.
always said it has to be simple, economical, economy of motion, longest weapon nearest target, and you always think of hitting. And if you're not doing any of those, then what are you doing?
Right.
But that was on a way of you find that you're in critical range, something happens, whether, we can go past the stages of, verbal conversation, because if you didn't de-escalate it by now, then there's a problem.
Yeah, of course.
You just jam him with all that firepower, and that's what he meant. But with finesse, you don't just sit there and barrage hit people. You have to understand your positions as you're doing it.
Now, what about Steve?
You know, both Steve and Jerry had this way of speaking to you that helped you question yourself. And Steve really refined the way he'd do that with you. Um, so I'd jump into a class here and there because I live close to him, and he's retired by now. Yeah, he's definitely retired because he said it quite a bit.
Okay.
But he had a group class, and every time I go, and there was a beginner there, he would teach them some forms, but he would want you to kind of explore it. And then you'd also kind of say, okay, well, if you're interested in that, this is how you would do it. So he's kind of leaving it up to the individual to kind of find their path.
Mm,
And I think that's the way he looks at it. But Steve understands this very
mm,
well, very well. It's just that well, I don't want to speak for him, but the way I see it is that he's at a point where he doesn't necessarily need to say, okay, Baijian stance. Okay, get into this Baijian stance and start hitting this way. Because by the time he teaches you that punch, then it changes completely the next time you see him.
right.
So
Right. These the seminars, I remember you and I talking that you don't have a brick and mortar school. You were going to, but you felt that after the virus's one on origins, that you decided to do seminars instead of brick and mortar schools. Why is that?
seminars, well, brick and mortar in the sense of like opening a school with martial arts and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I started leaning more towards clientele, personal training, plan commitments, things like that.
Mm,
So I have a few clients that are local that do Jeet Kune Do, but I don't. It's not like my full time aspiration to teach Jeet Kune Do, to people that want to do Jeet Kune Do. It's more about plan commitments, conditioning, and then I have levels up to the JKD if they're ready for it. Sparring and all that stuff can come later,
right.
but seminars seem to be more tailored right now for the art of JKD.
So you did a seminar with my teacher and Sifu Richard Torres and also Sifu Joaquin Marcelo. Have you been in that type of event where there's three Jikendo instructors teaching the same art but different type of ways? And what did you think of it? What did you take from that?
Event went really well. It was an excellent way to reconnect. Almost felt like it rekindled the past because had done this in the past, and you were part of one of the Seattle events back in 2008.
Oh yeah.
That was another experience I've had with other Jeet Kune Do
It was
instructors.
actually the first time I met you. I don't know if I
Oh,
told you that. Yeah.
that yeah, that year.
Yeah.
And then in '09 did the same thing. But
Right.
I was more representing my teacher at the time. So then I thought it was great to meet others because to see their perspective, to have a conversation would be great, because then I can see it for the better. And all, respect to everybody that learned from someone that straight down the line to Bruce Lee, they have something to say. And
Right.
if you listen, it usually will spark something in you. Um, and I think that's really important. I um, I had a chance to listen to Richard a little bit and Joaquin, um, and their perspectives are great. And I like the way the energy felt that entire event. Everybody was there to learn. Everybody respected each other. They respected each other because us three also respected each other because we had that bond.
Right.
That's how it works. If you don't have teachers that have the same energy level, it's not going to work. You'll have issues. Now, I'm not seeing one comment or disregard of the event since then.
Right.
We were like family, so that's how
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
When you do these seminars all over the world, do you feel that what you're teaching is being cemented into the student's psyche? Meaning that do you feel that it's going to make a difference for them because they come to see you?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. Because there's a reoccurrence of attendees that have attended the Japan events. In fact, they like it to be a really closed door workshop. I'm like, come
Hmm.
on, guys, we need to I mean, in order for you to grow, you need your own students as well.
Right.
But they're just like, it's just like important to them, and I get it. It does take time though, because you see, they only see me once a year, and then I do have obviously an online community, an online course that they can take while they're waiting until the next event. So with that, I feel like they are fully committed. I mean, I didn't tell them, you can only train with me. I mean, we're this far away, but at the same time, stay focused, stay on the path, so you at least get the training that you need. So
Right.
yeah, I had this experience with Germany, the same thing. Now Germany has a different culture, and they do bounce around a little bit with different instructors, but
Mhm.
I see growth in some. Yeah.
There are certain Jeet Kune Do martial artists that feel that particular tools won't work in fighting situations. I've heard one particular Jeet Kune Do instructor saying that elbows and knees don't work in a fight. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know. If they tried to employ elbows and it didn't work, I suppose it didn't work for them.
Right? I mean, that's the same thing I said. I'm like, okay, if you used it and it didn't work, okay, so are you saying that it's not going to work in a fight? So, yeah, okay, I
I
get it.
mean, if they didn't test it or pressure test it in some way, or if they did try to pressure test it and it didn't seem to work, then all right. I guess that's, yeah, this personal experience. But I mean, any impact that you make is viable to an understanding. Like if you do a hook punch to something, there's a lot of power behind it. You do an elbow in the same direction with and you hit that target, there's a lot of power to it.
Right,
So why couldn't you make it work?
exactly.
And then that would be a question whether or not, that you can go down a rabbit hole with this type of discussion, or it depends on if you had a conversation in front of them. If you were in front of them and so, well, show me why you think it didn't work.
Mhm.
Now that's different. You're in
Right,
person, you're facing them. Now
right.
when it's comment boards, that could be forever. And then it can go,
That's,
he'll take a different turn.
yeah,
So,
of course.
but
Yeah.
but you ask them like, all right, so what's the context? What happened? That's
Right.
that's what probably I would ask. Well, somebody blocked it. Well, why would they block it? Well, it's because he's training Muay Thai. Okay. Well, he's training Muay Thai. What were you using? I was using Muay Thai. Well, that's it. Every system's going to work against itself.
Right.
You kind of have to lead them in the way to where they find out the answer for themselves.
You mentioned Muay Thai.
That's
This is
just
very,
example, by the way.
oh yeah,
I love
of
Muay
course.
Thai.
Um, this is the old age question, and it always these type of questions always comes to us, quote unquote, original JKD martial artists. And I've asked you this, and we don't have to really dwell into it that much, but like maybe a few short words or maybe a good summary concepts. I don't want to get to the point where I'm bad mouthing concepts, but
Yeah.
for me personally, I feel like I don't understand it. Okay. In your opinion, what do you feel or how do you feel? What does it look like to you? What does concepts look like to you?
I think not only just concepts, but other views, because there
Mhm.
are other camps developed that has happened since the Tao Jeet Kune Do came out in '74, and they just started. People were exploring different avenues.
Right.
Here's the thing that before I get into concepts, I just want to make sure um, comprehend why this has happened. Is because remember that we're in JKD is in the public sphere.
Mhm.
Nobody is really um, guiding it. There's not one source that's guiding it.
Mhm.
So you have different individuals that are trying, or different camps or different groups are trying to say their system's the best. Now, they all have their customs and beliefs that's been built on. So it's pretty hard to, say after 30 years of their customs and beliefs to say, no, you're wrong. It's not going to work. So they've already built a lifestyle around it. So they're going to protect everything they can around it. So then, on an aspect of other points of views, and I'm not going to point who,
Right.
but let's just say that all techniques that you start to explore with are good. It's not to say that they're not good. But the question I think I would have for anyone is that what are you going to use it for and at what time and where if you're going to use it against an opponent?
Mm.
So these are things that we have to, have a conversation with people. It's not to say, you're doing it wrong or it wasn't ever in the notes or Bruce Lee never said it that way. But
Right.
you would say the questions I would ask is that, okay, what tools are you using that are high probable in this type of environment?
Hmm.
The your success rate. If you had a tool, which tool would you use? Well, I would just use, if somebody says something, well, I would use the finger jab. Okay, cool. Let's stay there. Um, if you were going to apply it, and when would you apply it? And so forth. So then you start guiding them in that conversation. So, to us, when we say original, that also took sound to,
Yes.
classified in a different area.
Yes.
So let's look at it from a perspective of then um, success rates of tools or timing. So because is Jeet Kune Do an actual style-based martial art or is it a timing art?
There are a majority of people when they ask me what do I do Jeet Kune Do, and they scratch their head like, What's that?" Do you feel that Jeet Kune Do, after the man had passed 50 something years later, do you feel that it should be in the spotlight, or it should be just where it is right now? Because Jeet Kune Do is not a household name, right?
No,
When people mention karate, oh, I know what karate is. Taekwondo,
of
oh, I know what
course.
that is. And obviously nowadays BJJ, oh yeah, I know what MMA, right?
But
USC.
that's a good question. I never really thought all the way through that. I mean, if you were to ask me if what I thought Bruce Lee would do, I mean, just my review of the man's life, I think he would have just kept it all to himself and been like, that I was great at that time period, but I'm making film. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
reason
of course, of course.
to showcase this. But because of the right timing of his life and his charisma and everything and the way he passed away, it just kind of amplified everything. And then once the notes released, it was even more amplification of
Yeah.
curiosity and martial artists that wanted to be like him. So
Mhm.
then there's generations after generations that fulfill that role and of that need. Like, okay, I want that power, and that's usually what it is. People want that power, that feeling of confidence. So that was like the top of the game. Like, I want to be like that. But you come to find out that in those eras, and maybe your teacher would also find this enlightening, that it's also people have tested these theories, but then again in the 70s and 80s, most of the original students probably weren't like really refined as much. So whatever
Mm.
they were sharing, and some of those students were learning from these students
Mhm.
or Bruce Lee students, they try to go out and test it, and then they say, "Nah, it never works. So I got to go into doing this and doing
Mm.
that." And there's so many different variations out there that people can do things, and they felt more comfortable going with that because now the success rate is higher, and the Jeet Kune Do was kind of getting suppressed over time. Now, some of us worked pretty hard to prove the fact that it was something there.
Mm.
But I'm gonna say, Vincent, that I think around this timeline, it's pretty small. I mean, I only know of a few people that know really how to do it. And it's like, okay, what is Jeet Kune Do then? Is it is it something that people can do? Is it something that they need?
Right.
Is it something that they're going to be able to apply? What is the rate or the age rate of a boxer? When do they retire? Usually 30 or
Yeah,
29.
probably 30, yeah, around that.
Yeah. The same with the Jeet Kune Do. There's only an influx of time that you could apply its as full maximum. There's only a time that you could apply it at its full maximum, that full range of maximum attributes, the mental attitude, everything, your whole drive to do this right, right?
Right.
And then it starts dwindling away by age or by responsibilities, by family life, lifestyle, everything. And so when is it really important to use this? And I don't think Bruce Lee would have known how to answer that question, I think, during his lifetime because he was young doing it already.
Yeah, that's true. Three things before we go. I
Yeah.
know I wanted to keep it very light, but then conversation is really good.
Sure,
Three
sure.
things. Yeah, three things before we go. First question. I always ask this, when was the first time that you heard or seen Bruce Lee?
Um, I've seen him in a film. My brother was watching it. They were all into kung fu movie theater and stuff like that back then. There was a bunch of movies on TV. But I started watching him then. Wasn't really like something I wanted to do as of yet, but I
Hmm.
think it was just a compilation of parallel things happening in my life that just kind of led up back to Bruce Lee after watching his films. But yeah, I was on obviously television. Um, when I was just a kid, yeah, really young.
Yeah, what you think of his ability as a martial?
Uh, Interesting, very cool. You find that comparison to all the other kung fu movies that people, the
Mhm.
way they were moving, there was just
Yeah.
like the stillness that they call it the opera dance fighting methods.
Yeah.
In comparison to his, he kind of just
Right.
like overlapped all that. It
Oh
was more
yeah.
real. It was just an embodiment. Okay, here's these Chinese movies that tend to like stop, block, hit, block,
Mhm.
making all those noises.
Right.
And here he comes just like jump kicking people and just back fisting people with power. It's like, holy crap. You could tell a difference completely. I
All
mean,
right.
that's why he stood out because he changed
Absolutely.
it. He
Right.
changed everything.
Now, second question, Jeet Kune Do. When did you first find out about Jeet Kune Do, and when did you find out that was the one for you to learn?
Well, I come across the Jeet Kune Do through the bookstores. Nobody really told me about it. I just found it. And long and behold, Bruce Lee's face was on the Dow. I was like, holy smokes, I got to get that. And then I found the Bruce Lee fight. So yeah, it started segueing to Jerry's articles. Not that I didn't read everybody else's, but there was a lot of information out there with Bruce Lee magazines. Again, bookstores, grocery stores, whenever I had a chance to just read those magazines.
Right.
Still remember when I was in the grocery store, my mom would take me, with her. Every time my mom would go to the grocery store, can I go? You know, and then when I go with her, I'm like, okay, see ya. So I go right to the magazines, and the whole time she's shopping, I'm just sitting there reading the magazines. Um, but I come across not through that environment, but as I was really digging in as old magazines and stuff, I found Jerry's, which kind of pointed out to the five ways of attack, which related to the Tao. And once I saw that and I read it, I felt that was very interesting that he was pointing those things out and kind of, I don't think it was decoding it, but he was just explaining how these things would work
Mm.
with principle. And I think that's what really attracted me to Jerry more. And later on, that's when I did contact him. But yeah, the Jeet Kune Do was interesting. I mean, I don't even know if I'm still pronouncing it today in Chinese.
You know what?
But
That's kind of funny too because I have a friend who speaks Chinese, and
uh
he's saying that however we're saying it, it's totally wrong. But right, because you know why? In I like for instance, Bruce Lee spoke in Cantonese,
right.
and there are tones, right?
Yeah, there's a fluctuation of
Right.
tones.
So the tone of Jeet should be like Jeet, like a low tone. And
Really low.
yeah,
It has to be
so we've
like
been
that.
butchering the name for years, and it's just like, well, I mean, we're not Chinese, but hey, we're at least we're trying to keep the name relevant. All right, so last question, and I've always asked all the people that I interview. I have this thing called the last word. Now, for you, what would the last word be for you for this podcast interview? It could be about Bruce Lee, it could be about anything else. What is the last word for you for this podcast?
Well, being that this is about JKD, if you're interested in learning, and I'm speaking to newcomers, because we all know that people that have been in this for years, you're going to think the way you think. It's fine. Nobody's going to take that away from you. But new people that are looking to train with this, you have to just realize that there are teachers that are willing to teach you, but you also have to work on your own abilities and also refrain yourself from really diving down the wrong path. Because if you do train with the wrong individuals, then they'll instill their own fears and desires into you. So you have to really be careful in the way you train this because it is a devastating method to end a self-defense situation. But you have to have self-control and you have to develop that self-awareness early on before you start taking on this role. So I do wish the best of luck to those that are going to start working on something like this because it does require the right state of mind to
Mhm.
do it. It's just because you say it or explain it doesn't mean that you can understand it. And not only that, if I can even explain it to people, doesn't mean that I can understand it for you. So it does require some commitment and time. And I wish everyone the best in their journey.